Hiya, welcome to Darren in the studio. Thanks for swinging by for another video. It wasn't that long ago, was it, since we were last together, and I was waffling on about me some albums from 1974, albums that were 50 years old this year in 2024. And in that video I did say that I'd be sort of catching up on my anniversary albums, and this is another one. This is 1984. We're going to be looking at 10 albums in my collection from 1984. Of course, there'll be lots and lots of people out there who say things like, oh, you missed one, you missed this, you didn't talk about that. Well, I had a big list of albums and I had to cut it down to 10. You know me, if you're a regular to this channel, you'll know that I like to do me sort of stuff in tens, whatever the subject is. It's just a nice little round number, and also keeps the videos nice and sort of short, and we don't sort of end up going into the realms of turning into a Netflix series. So 10 albums from 1984, 10 albums that are 40 years old this year, 2024. So nice little mix as well of styles in here, a bit of this, a bit of that, and maybe some albums along the way that you weren't sort of expecting. So let's have a look. It's all in alphabetical order. Let's start off. We're starting off at B, and with a nice little all-girl band from America. Of course, we're talking about the Bangles. This was the first Bangles album. I think it's the first Bangles album. I've never come across an album which came out before this, before 1984. I assume that this is the first Bangles album. If it isn't, please do let me know and I'll go searching for it. All Over the Place is the title. Of course, Susanna Hoffs, Vicky Peterson, Debbie Peterson, and Michael Steele. I always thought it was Michelle Steele, but it's not. It's actually Michael. If you look there, you can see that. All-girl band from the States. Like I said, this was, as far as I'm aware, this was their first album. This is on the CBS label. Not sure whether this is an original pressing. I certainly bought it sort of, I don't know, back end of the 80s probably. Got a barcode on. I'm not sure when barcodes started to be introduced. Somebody will know and someone will let me know. All Over the Place, the Bangles. This is on the CBS label. Nice little nice clean pressing. Bought it brand new back in the day, probably the late 80s, something like that. Not sure whether it's an original pressing or not. It's got all these adverts for the nice price albums on there from budget releases from CBS. Bangles, good strong album. This Going Down to Liverpool was a big record on here. Hero Takes a Fall, James, is also on here. Good songs, good sort of guitar based, what you might have called a garage band back in the day. The Bangles had amazing success, of course, towards the end of the 80s and sort of into the 90s. All Over the Place, celebrating its 40th birthday in 2024. Next up, how about a bit of Kiss? And of course their 1984 album Animalize. Great album this. Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Eric Carr and Mark St. John. Of course, Mark St. John died a few years ago, and of course Eric Carr passed away in 1991. This album was pretty much finished by Paul Stanley and Eric Carr and a bit of Gene Simmons. The rumour is that Paul Stanley plays most of the bass on this album, apart from the stuff that Gene sings on, because Gene, of course, was busy in the movie Runaway and doing other films and stuff like that, being a movie star. And then Mark St. John came in and finished off the guitar work, and of course Mark wasn't with the band very long. Finished this album, was on this album, and then went on tour with them, but had to pull out through illness and never came back to the band. Animalize from Kiss. This is a nice little Dutch pressing on the Casablanca label in the UK. This came out on the Vertigo label. Of course, they were all owned by the same people by that time. Casablanca Records. Nice little tanned labels. I do have it on the Vertigo label as well on vinyl, and I've also got it back there somewhere on CD. 1984, celebrating its 40th birthday, Kiss, Animalize. Next up, one of my favourite bands. This was their first long player, because they had an EP out before this called 10560. These are the Long Riders. This is a great little album. This was the album that kind of broke them, really. This is Native Sons, 1984. This is on the Zippo label. Sadly, we lost Tom Stevens a couple of years ago, but the band's still together. They're still making great music. You might recognise sort of Sid Griffin here. He's had a very successful solo career and also does some sort of commentary on the BBC sometimes with their music stuff. Native Sons, 1984, Zippo label. Show you the label quickly while we've got a chance. Nice little original pressing. I think this is a UK press. Love this album. This has got a lot of good music on it. Run Dusty Run is one of my favourite tracks on this album. Tell It to the Judge on Sunday, Wreck of the 809, Ivory Towers, Fair Game, Never Got to Meet the Mom, that's a good one. The Long Riders, celebrating its 40th birthday in 2024, Native Sons. Next, here's an album I absolutely swear I've got on vinyl, but can I find it? No, I don't know what I've done with it. And I've looked through all my sort of Queen albums, can't find it there, so I must have misplaced it somewhere. I'm absolutely positive I've got this on vinyl. This is Queen's 1984 release, The Works. Now, The Works was sort of Queen's comeback album, if you will, and what a comeback it was. Big hit, of course, was Roger Taylor's Radio Gaga, but a lot of big records on here. Tear It Up was big. It's a Hard Life was a hit single for them, of course. I Want to Break Free, Hammer to Fall, Is This the World We Created? Queen's comeback album, The Works, 1984. This is a nice little original CD release made in Swindon at the EMI pressing plant, long gone now. The Works from Queen, 40 years old, can you believe it? Next, these guys, the Ramones. This is my favourite Ramones album, their 1984 album, Too Tough to Die. This is a great album. This is a 2002 reissue on the Warner Rhino label. Got some extra tracks. The second column here are all the extra tracks. I'm not really a big fan of albums that are like this. I wish they'd sort of maybe put the extra tracks on a separate disc and made it a 2-disc set, but I think it kind of spoils it along the way. These were nice though, these reissues, because they all came in a nice little slip case which keeps the CD case itself nice and unscratched. A lot of great songs on here. Mama's Boy, Too Tough to Die, the title track, Warthog, Chasing the Night, Howling at the Moon, Daytime Dilemmas, Planet Earth 1988. Really great album. From 1984, the Ramones, Too Tough to Die. Great album. Next, something a little bit different for you. REM. I just sort of started to get some friction in the sort of early to sort of mid 80s. And this was one of their earlier albums. In fact, this is REM's second full-length album. They had an EP called Chronic Town, and then in 1983 they put out an album called Murmur, and then they did this, and this was one of those albums that really sort of set them going. Of course, a few years later they were to sign to Warner Brothers, and their career just went absolutely mental, as you all know. But I like a lot of the early IRS stuff. This is on the IRS label. This is an original 1984 pressing, REM's Reckoning. I'll show you the label. Nice sort of original inner. There's the original IRS Records label. A lot of great songs on here. One of my favourite songs on here is Don't Go Back to Rockville, but I also like Pretty Persuasion. That's a good track. This is funny because all the tracks are listed on the front and nothing's listed on the back, just the pictures of the band. Of course, you got Michael Stipe, Peter Buck, Mike Mills, and Mike Berry. Is it Mike Berry? Bill Berry. I apologise. Bill Berry, Mike Mills, Michael Stipe, and Peter Buck. My brain's gone. REM, the Recording album, 1984. 40 years old this year. Great album, really good album. How about some more rock music? Here's an album which was very, very big for this band, although they were very famous when this came out. We're going to Germany with this one, and it's the Scorpions 1984 release, Love at First Sting. This is a nice little repress on the EMI Fame label. This originally came out on the Harvest label, but I think Harvest and EMI, it was all more or less the same sort of thing back in the day. Usually the Fame releases had a little sort of Fame logo running across the top, but this one hasn't, but you can see the Fame there on the bottom. Show you the label. This is a great album. Great album. Some big records on here. Love at First Sting, like I say, was the not the album that sort of made them famous. They were already famous and had hits in the UK and all around the world, but this album really sort of did it for them. Bad Boys Running Wild, Rock You Like a Hurricane's on here, Coming Home, Big City Nights was a huge record from them, and of course Still Loving You is on here as well. The Scorpions from 1984, Love at First Sting, 40 years old. Next, we're sticking with the rock, and in the same sort of genre, but we're going to America. I think this was the album that really sort of, another album in 1984 that catapulted a band into absolute mega stardom. This is Twisted Sister. This is a nice little original 1984 press of Stay Hungry. I think this is a German press. It is a German press. I'll put a little sticker up here, import, which I used to do when I was much younger, but I don't do that anymore, because saying that it's an import isn't necessarily the case, because it was actually made in Germany. Of course, it was printed in Germany, but they were made in Germany for the European market, including the UK, so it's not necessarily an import as such, not like an album that's not available in the UK, but somebody's imported it so it can be available. Stay Hungry from Twisted Sister, some big records on here. Stay Hungry, of course, We're Not Gonna Take It. My favourite on here is the Horatoria, Captain Howdy and Street Justice. I love those pieces. I Wanna Rock is on here as well, a really great album. Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry from 1984. Again, like I said before, this is an original. This, I think this is this what is this Atlantic? Yes, on the Atlantic label. Nice little bespoke labels. Good stuff. If you're a usual viewer to the channel, you'll know that not that long ago I bought this on CD on the market, sealed. I think it was about £2, something like that. Good stuff. Next up, here's a band who I interviewed the vocalist on my radio show just this week. It went out last night. This is a band called Rothchild, or Wrathchild. I always say Rothchild because of my northern accent. This is their debut album from 1984, Stack Attack. This is on the Heavy Metal Records label, and it soon became FM Revolver. This is the reissue of it, because it actually originally was released with a different sleeve, different artwork, a different picture, but they reissued it with this. I must try and find me a copy of the original sleeve. Here you are. This is Rocky Shades Just Here, who I interviewed on my radio show. I'm proud to say actually that Rocky's actually a mate now, and it's an absolute privilege to know him. And this is a great album. Often this album is often taken the piss out of, and it shouldn't be, because it's a great album. It really set a bit of a trend. And of course, Wrathchild were the band in the UK that started all the hair metal. There's no doubt about it. Of course, in America, bands like Motley Crue had come along and had started that genre. But in the UK, Wrathchild were the originators of this kind of look. And still today, it's a very, very popular form of rock music and sort of image as well. This has got some great songs on it. Stack Attack, of course, the title track's a classic. Too Wild to Tame, Trash Queens, Kick Down the Wall, All Right with the Boys, which is a Gary Glitter cover. Sweet Surrender's a great track. Really, really solid album, this. I wish that when I was talking to Rocky, that he's had terrible trouble trying to acquire the original master tapes to this album, because he'd love to put it out, sort of remix it, give it a bit more of a heavy feel, because the production was a little bit sort of left a little bit much to be desired, the production on this, but the songs are so sort of solid, really solid songs. Wrathchild's Stack Attack from 1984. Maybe we'll get a reissue of it if Rocky ever gets the master tapes. Last but not least, this is a 1990 repress. This is a 1990 repress of Frank Zappa's Them or Us, originally put out in 1984. I absolutely love this album, but it's the only album I have of Frank Zappa. I have this and a best of. Maybe I should get some more of his stuff. I love this album. I first heard this back in when it would be I first heard this probably around 1990 actually. A friend of mine had it and I borrowed it and I taped it, and then a couple of years later I managed to get my own copy of it. Really great artwork as well, as all Frank Zappa sort of albums are, I'm sure. Really good stuff. And there he is on the back. Frank Zappa's Them or Us from 1984. I've seen lots and lots of people talk about Frank Zappa records, but I've never ever seen anybody talking about this album. I don't know why. Maybe they don't like it, I don't know. I do, I love it. This was one of the first albums to feature Steve Vai. Steve Vai was part of this album. Great songs on here. In France is one of my favourites on here. Yahozna, which is basically a rock track which is back to front. Truck Driver Divorce is on here. What else do I like? Baby Take Your Teeth Out is really great. Be In My Video as well. Some really good stuff on here. Just a great album. Frank Zappa, nice little double album as well on the Zappa label. I'll show you one of the labels. They're nothing sort of special, but I hope me putting my records down is not bouncing the camera around too much. On the Zappa label, Frank Zappa's Them or Us, like I say, a repress from 1990 when they put out his material, when he sort of formed his own record label. Frank Zappa, Them or Us, 40 years old, this album, and it's a great album. That's it. That's my 10 albums from 1984. We'll do 1994 very, very soon. I'm working on it at the moment, so hopefully it won't be too long before we're looking at some albums that are 30 years old. We'll do that very soon. Like I said earlier on in the video, let me know your views and comments, not only about these albums, but about other albums in 1984. What are your favourite sort of albums in 1984? Do let me know. Of course, if you like what you see here on this particular channel, do ensure that you like, subscribe. The subscriptions are, I think at this recording, there's 633. Can't get any more exact than that. Trying to, I don't know whether, I was hoping to get to 1,000 towards the end of 2024. I don't think I'm going to get that, am I? It'd be nice to get to 700 by the end of 2024. That'd be cool. So if you do like the videos, please do like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that sort of stuff. And we'll see you very, very soon for another video right here in the studio. Until that time, look after yourselves, look after each other, and we'll see you in a bit. Ta-ra.